Welcome to the Love Conscious Human Podcast, your launchpad to cultivate and elevate your personal power. I'm your host, business strategist, and leadership coach, Dr. Terry. Let's have fun and jump right in.
Hello, Love Conscious Humans. Thank you for joining us. Today we have a very special guest, a wonderful long-term client of mine and a really good friend and wonderful human being, Lu Wang. Lu, can you introduce yourself? Who are you? What do you do?
Sure. Thanks for having me on the podcast, Dr. Terry. So everyone who's here today, welcome. My name is Lu. I'm the founder and CEO of Komodo Technologies. We are a boutique and innovative data product R&D firm. We help companies discover and unleash the power of data, technology, and people. We solve problems at the intersection of all those three things with a combination of tools like upskilling, staff education, R&D partnerships where we come and design custom solutions, and of course, a healthy dose of artificial intelligence and machine learning. So I'm really happy to be here.
Wow. I don't think I've ever actually heard all of that together. We've been working for a while, so I'm just like, oh yeah, that's right. Oh yeah, that's right. Oh yeah, that's right. And total love, just loving it. That's great. Yeah.
Sometimes I forget everything that I do as well, to be honest. We just go through our lives doing our jobs. If we're lucky, serving people that we care about. And it's sometimes nice to sit back and see everything that you have done and recognize that everything you know how to do right now are things that you have had to learn. Personally, I've learned a lot by working with you, Dr. Terry, and I can see how I'm not the same person that I was even just 2 years ago.
Yeah. So I mean, you've been through quite the leadership journey, and I don't expect you to stop growing anytime soon. I hope that doesn't feel like pressure. I hope that feels like confidence in you that you're going to continue to grow and lead in the way you do, which is actually quite special. Although I want to say something about your leadership style, which is very servant leadership. It's also something I'm seeing more and more of in what we can call the younger generations, where a really strong sense of purpose and doing the right thing for the bigger picture and doing the right thing for the people around us are part of every decision.
Yeah, I think it's very reassuring that you see more and more of it. Typically, my clients are companies that have been around a bit longer, where the leadership is a decade, if not 2 decades, older than me. I am 34, to help people put that into context. I'm not fresh out of school, but I'm also not, a silver-haired executive, right? And I think a lot of people grew up at a time where how you make money, how you live a good life was very formulaic, right? If you just do what your boss says, if you just follow this process, you're going to get it done. I think my generation, what is my generation? We're millennials. We've seen our parents go through the housing crisis. Some of us graduated during the recession. And then, of course, we were all working when COVID happened. We don't have pensions anymore. And I think for a lot of people, we really had to ask ourselves, why have worker and company relationships broken down, right? Why have they broken down? And what I see on both sides, now that I've been on both sides, both as a business owner and as a worker, as a team member in my team and a team leader in my team, I really see it from both sides. And I think one of the worst things to have come out of the older mindset is kind of a caring too much about getting what's fair, doing what's right, defined in a very narrow way. Right? So, what I found in my personal work is what is right, what is fair, depends a lot on what people need. Right? I know right now, diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives are often under attack. I would be crazy to ignore the context of the world that we live in.
Right.
So I don't want to say soft language like it depends. What's right depends. Let me tell you what it depends on, because people never tell you what it depends on. I found that it depends on the people that depend on you, right? Who are you impacting? You have to see them clearly and understand that your decisions mean a lot more to them than following some best practice about HR that ChatGPT assembles for you.
That's great. I want to stop you here for a second because I just kind of want to jump in on that. And I want to reiterate what you just said for anybody who's listening. It depends on the people who depend on you. So what we're talking about is not the notion of some abstract right or wrong.
Yeah, or what's popular or what's going to get you canceled.
Right, exactly. It's about what is needed.
Yeah.
And this is not some woo-woo where we hand out candy or something. No. This is about, well, maybe one person needs education. Maybe somebody else needs a bonus. Maybe somebody else needs a little more time. Like, what does somebody need to get to the next growth step, evolutionary step for them as a human? And it also includes the customers, not just the employees and the employers, because we have to look at what the employers need as well. You're a CEO, you know that matters, because if you're not making money, you can't pay anybody.
That's
so,
right.
So it's what people need. And I think I want to bring this back also to deepen the conversation a little bit around love consciousness. Now, you've been working with me, you know my book. Can you talk a little bit before I make any official definition of what love consciousness and war consciousness are? Can you talk about that in relation to what you're saying now, please?
Yeah, totally. I can give it a shot. So let's talk about looking around at the people who depend on you so that everyone can have a fair shot at getting what they need. If we look at that statement with love consciousness, it means that you can include more people than yourself when you're considering needs. You can see more people and hold their experience, their needs, their identity in your head, as well as holding your own. Right? This takes practice. And it follows your point that what people need and what's fair also has to include the customers, because the customers also depend on you. Right? At a minimum, they depend on you to deliver what they've paid for. Maybe they depend on you for other stuff too, like to handle their information with integrity, right? Not to hurt them, not to cheat them in the end. So when we talk about the concept of fairness and employer-employee relationships, love consciousness is thinking about what all parties at the table need and not seeing that as a threat. That is not typically how we've been taught to negotiate.
I love that. Yeah. I love that. So I'm going to jump in for our listener to reiterate the definitions of war consciousness and love consciousness. War consciousness being a kind of low-level thinking from a place of fear, where we have to capture, contain, and control someone or something outside of ourselves in order to try and make ourselves feel better, safer, less afraid. Where somebody wins, somebody loses. It's very binary, right or wrong. It's very rigid. It's very reductionist, and it's that left brain. It's that left brain, ones and zeros, right? That's all there is. Then the right mind, the love consciousness, is this complementing, comprehending, inclusive mindset that you really described well. Is you're holding all of these other points of information, these other people, a higher understanding of all of these things going on, and you allow them all to exist in complement to one another, and you seek the higher solutions. And it's where we use a dose of compassion, and we get higher solutions. I think that's also a very important point. When we're, as business people, if we're coming from love consciousness, we elevate our consciousness to a place where we understand more better, without the tension and the angst that comes with holding questions that are kind of open and non-defined and multidimensional. And
Yeah.
we're okay with that.
Yeah, and I want to follow on that point for business leaders. This does not end up giving the company a raw deal. I really want to emphasize that. You can hold multiple perspectives, which includes yours and the company's. And if you can do that, you also stand a chance to convince everyone that, well, especially for employees, their future self is also at the table. So sometimes when we're negotiating, say something very, very simple, something very left brain, like work schedules, right? People come in with all kinds of ideas of what they deserve, how much they should be trusted, things like that, right? If we have a reductionist approach, then we fall back to rules and authority. And really, no one's happy because the employee feels mistrusted, misused at worst. And the employer is totally not convinced that there is any desire to create the right outcomes. And instead, we're here to manage somebody's like hours in a machine. Instead, that conversation, when approached with love consciousness, can be turned into a conversation where we each talk about the future company, the future self, right? There's an element of investment. But also, what do you need right now? The current self, the current company. A lot of times when people come to you needing a schedule change, it's easy to assume that they don't care. But sometimes by differentiating between the future company, which of course every business owner is concerned about, we have to differentiate that from the company today and what the person is dealing with today. Because you could turn this request that can turn into rules and authority into a chance to understand what your employee needs, give them a moment to catch their breath, build loyalty, and make it very clear that you're investing in them so that they can invest back in the company.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, people could play games and cheat. But let me tell you, they were going to do that anyways if that was the type of person you're dealing with. But most of the time, people aren't like that. People have real bodies. People have real lives. Right? Sometimes things go awry. So opening yourself up to the possibility of explaining your case through the lens of love consciousness, at the very least, gets you a chance to reiterate to the employee what's important to the company, not just making them comply with the rules.
Yeah.
Then they will miss your chance to reiterate what's important to the company.
I love all of this. This is great. And I think you really hit it on the nose. I think it is really, because we get this impression that love consciousness is this woo-woo, oh, we're all gonna kumbaya and sing and go on a retreat or something. Not that that's a bad thing, but that's actually not what it's about. And you said something really important, which was most of the time, most people feel better when they're doing a good job, when they're adding value, not just because they're being validated from the exterior, but also because they can feel it intrinsically when they're doing a good job. Most of the problem is that we have violated that natural state of basic goodness, which is in most people most of the time anyway. We have taught people that it's not good to be nice. You're going to get walked all over. You're going to be used and abused. You need to defend yourself. You have to get more than you give. And so we've been trained into the war consciousness. And the war consciousness is actually not our fundamental state of being as human beings. Love consciousness is. War consciousness is much more of a societal learned structure. And when we look at that, you got to ask, like, well, why did we do that and how did we get here?
Well,
Go
I
ahead.
have a few thoughts. As a business owner, I think why do war consciousness? Well, war consciousness is about capture, contain, and control. Businesses, in order to consolidate resources, corporations really, not businesses, because business is just a way for you to exchange with the market something of value. I actually have no problems with businesses, and I have no problems with corporations. I think if I'm trying to answer your question of how did we get here, right? Corporations were invented as a way for us to consolidate and pool resources, to pull off projects like building a railroad across America that really would be impossible to do as a village. Right? So from a very reasonable initial state, right, we created this infrastructure to consolidate resources and to command and direct large sums of money, large sums of resources. The issue is, if you sit on top of that, you could do the noble thing, which is to build the railroad, but it's also very tempting to enrich yourself, right? So there have been many, many studies done about power. And it's not that power corrupts, it's that when there is an existing structure where the person on top gets to command resources without really any consequences, that tends to attract people who really want to do war, right? Who really want to win big. So I think it would be, well, how do we get here? These structures exist, they got big, and the ways that people get to the top were not really filtered for ethics or morality or mission alignment. We weren't too concerned who got to run companies and what they were accountable for. Today, many corporations are still simply accountable. The accountability measures are, can you keep the structure big and can you keep the structure going? That, in turn, puts the most powerful, most war conscious people at the top of the most powerful war machines. So we just keep going.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So it's not that there's an inherent badness about these structures. What has happened is they were not balanced out, like you said. Now you talked about ethics, morals, or like greater vision or long-term vision, and maybe that's also because at the time we didn't know any better. And so it's like, well, when we didn't know that was going to be the outcome, we didn't know that it was going to go that way. And then once it did, people were in the position enjoying their power and therefore didn't want to lose it. And so, that's the one thing that people hate is to lose something, that feeling of loss. So they're going to do everything to maintain the structure that maintains a certain illusion of life for themselves and those around them. But it's not really, that real, because if it collapses at the bottom, then everything will collapse as well. But I want to go back a little bit to where there was no accountability. There was no accountability because we thought profit was the point.
Yeah, that was the metric for you to do a good job. Can you just keep the resource consolidating machine on and churning? If I put it in those terms, it doesn't even sound that hard, does it? It already exists.
And it doesn't matter what you do by hook or by crook, as long as you get the profit, you're good. I mean,
Yeah, simple. Too simple.
simple.
Too
Too
simple.
simple. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, we can do better. You know, I hear some people, they're like, well, if we don't measure profits, we wouldn't measure anything at all. And I'm like, please, of course we can create a metric that has some complexity. We have numerators and denominators. We can add things together. We can average them, right? We can do all kinds of things. But often we refuse to look at something other than a simple scalar, which is profit. That's a very uninteresting number. Scalars always go up. There is no upper bound, and you don't actually know how big is good. Right?
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah. And I think this kind of drives me into part of the thing like that we talk about in the book is the difference between money and value. Because there's no monetization of anything if there's no value creation. Somebody has to get value out of whatever product or service or thing you're doing and offering. Nobody's going to give you money for something that doesn't give them any value. And even if the value is imaginary, at least there's something, like, because there is, if it's a scam, it's imaginary value and you're getting scammed. You're getting, you're giving money.
We're not promoting scams, but we're saying even scams have to communicate value.
Yes, exactly. Even scams have to communicate some kind of value. But if we're creating real value, it's monetization is something that actually just becomes natural. In my book, we talk about natural economics. It's like circular economics, only what we're looking at is on a deeper level that if you take a tree, for example, and you take good care of the tree, so in the fall, the leaves fall, they biodegrade, they turn into soil. There's a nutrients in the soil that goes up in the spring, and it goes through the cycles. It's natural, and at some point, the leaves come, the flowers come, the fruit comes, and the fruit falls. So there's always fruition for something that is healthy. A healthy organization, a healthy organism has fruition at some point. And so profit is going to happen naturally as a byproduct of a business that is well run, that is creating value along the way.
A lot of people don't trust themselves to create value. So I did this exercise for a project where I got a group together, and these people work, they're professionals, but many of them, but I just asked them a question. What do you have to do to start a business, right? What's the minimum number of things? What is the minimum inputs you need? A lot of them said, we need a plan. We need a business plan. Some of them said, we need a loan. Some of them said, we need to raise money. And, I'm sitting here, kind of not revealing anything on my face, I hope, just letting everyone get a chance to speak. And then finally said, you need to find somebody who needs help, who you can help. You need your first customer that you could help, right? And in my head, I was like, bingo. Because that's all business is. You, as whatever unit, whether you're a solo business person, where you're a single person business, right? You're walking dogs, right? Whether you're a solo entrepreneur or part of a large conglomerate, your business doesn't exist unless you can make something or do something that somebody else wants.
Mhm.
And you said that profit is a side effect. I would say exchange of value is a side effect.
Mm.
Profit depends on how we account for costs. If I was a solo entrepreneur, I could be super, super happy with my first dog walking gig if I made $200. I could be super happy because I don't see the time that I put in as having a high cost yet because I'm just starting out. Or I can take the same $200 and be really mad because I said, I have looked for my first client for half a year. I can't believe it took me this long. Is my time not worth more than pennies an hour? You can take that exact same revenue and turn it unprofitable in your head. So profit depends on how you account for costs.
I love
A
that.
lot of times, yeah, a lot of times we think we're making negative profit, but really sometimes we're just investing in future profit. Right? My
Mhm.
story of dog walking, all that time I put in to find my first customer, that is not lost time. You can squander that time. It doesn't have to be.
I want to jump in, like, because right now what you're showing up with is a really awesome example of how to think in war consciousness and how to think in love consciousness. Like when you're in that war consciousness, it's that zero sum operation, like you're like accounting for costs and like, how do I know how much profit I made? And did I get ahead? Because I have to get more than I have to get more than I give, right? That's the whole cost, the revenue and cost basis is I have to get more than I give. And so that kind of idea is so ingrained in us, we're so programmed with it that we have a hard time seeing the bigger picture of, oh, well, I learned something and now I know how to do this. I know what doesn't work because I did for 6 months, I did that. Now I know what does work. Now I can identify my client. So this learning curve has made me more effective and more efficient. And now I can become an expert. And now I can figure out how to walk 3 dogs at once. And, so there's all of this growth and evolution of the individual or of the group or of the people or of the system that comes along with the love consciousness. Now, if you're in war consciousness and you look at this and you go, oh, I wasted my time, I'm going to quit now.
Yeah, I think a lot of good, promising new businesses die under war consciousness leadership. And a lot of businesses that have outlived their value, that need to evolve, cannot do so under war consciousness. I think war consciousness does the least damage when a business is scaling. But of course, a love conscious leader can scale a business too. So when I described my hypothetical dog walking scenario, a love conscious person, if they're good at accounting and if they're good as a resource manager, they would give themselves a set amount of time to experiment. I said 6 months, but maybe I was still employed then. I'm just doing this a couple hours a weekend. And then 6 months is a very sustainable way for me to live because I can step back and take a look at the whole picture. Right? What do I need to live well and also explore my capabilities as an entrepreneur? That statement I just said there is a very love conscious way of approaching starting a business.
Exactly. Exactly. I want to go back to the scale thing because I think we get really hooked on the idea of not growth of humans. We don't grow humans enough. It's our minds and our hearts and our whole beings that need to evolve in order for us to be better decision makers, better workers, better employees, and better bosses. Now, we don't do enough of that because that's a love conscious thing. But then, because we're obsessed with the scaling, with the numbers, which can be
Yes.
very war conscious very fast.
Yep.
We're just bean counters and we have to get aggressive and we got to go out there and we got to market this and we got to sell this and we have to, go capture, contain, and control lots of clients and get them to give us money. And we have to, we have to hire a lot of low paid people in some other country. We get into
I
all
see
of
this is the playbook for scale.
right.
Yes.
Yes. So but we have to think about like what what happens in the scale of it. What exactly? So if we want to be love conscious and growing people, first off, it might not be as fast. So CEOs or business people out there listening, it might not be as fast, but it might also be like a glowing ember from which you can start many fires instead of a flash in the pan, just straw fire that comes and goes and boom, it's gone. So there's that aspect of it. But if you want to scale and you want to do this in a love conscious way, what happens is what's necessary is the leadership, the executive team, and this works even at the corporate level, need to elevate their consciousness into a integral love conscious state so that they can then manage what otherwise would fall into basic war conscious behavior and turn it into just tactical, practical systems and processes in service of the bigger picture, where we're trying to go, our goal, the love conscious goal that we're after. And so there's this shift that happens when the executive team is love conscious, understanding from an elevated integral place of leadership what that means. And the tactical practical just becomes something kind of neutral. It's not actually war conscious anymore, because we're not just going to go out and get people because they're cheap. We're going to find the right people that give the right kind of results for what we need at this point.
Yeah. I think I can only speak from my personal experience and what I observe. I don't actually know what goes on in the hearts and minds of others, right? But I have heard people describe all types of chief financial officers. And you think chief financial officer, that has got to be a war conscious role. That is not true. There are CFOs who are so good at fostering innovation. And there are CFOs that get angry that they can't foster innovation, right? Like there's a whole spectrum. And I really think our idea of scale is a little bit oversimplified. Like when we started this conversation, Dr. Terry, you were talking about growing. I hope you don't stop growing. And then you laughed and said, I hope that don't gives you pressure. I know if people hear the word growth and they think, I got to scale up what I have to 10x what I have. Of course, that's going to give you pressure, right? Like nothing in nature 10x's in 2 years. That's called an invasive species. That's called ecosystem collapse, right? That's called you want to take over the territory. And for a lot of companies, dominating the territory is their only way to succeed.
So they think.
Or so they think. Exactly.
Yes. I want to go back for a second to the CFO and the innovation, because you really touched on something. Innovation, we talk about how innovation is so important. The future means our future on the planet Earth depends a lot on our ability at this point as humans to innovate. And innovation is coming from the creative right mind, from love consciousness. It is and always will come from that place of the human mind. And the more we have leadership that is thinking in this way, living in this way, the more we're going to have mind-blowing, paradigm-shifting innovation. I mean, I know of projects and I know of whole industries that are screaming to not some to be born and some to explode, and the only thing missing is the love conscious integral leaders.
Yeah. Can I jump in here? Because let me just share with you, based on what I've seen, because I'm an R&D partner. I help other companies do R&D. What is R&D? Research and development. Another way you can describe R&D is innovation, right? And the number one thing that I have to teach people at the tactical level, and it sounds so funny once I say it, is you have to ask your customers, ask your team, what do they think is needed? And what do they think they can do with a given amount of time as resource? Right? If you give them the freedom that you can afford to give them, of course, and then you give them the authority to ask how they can create value for the company, for the customers, and then you let them do it. And people always say, well, is that it? I'm like, yeah. They say, well, how do you manage it? Say, well, make them write down what they're going to do. And then at the end of that period, make sure they've done it. The metric is, did you do what you said you would do?
Mhm.
And then it's kind of funny because it sounds so simple, but you do these in small iterations of like a quarter and then another quarter. And then you build trust that people are going to do what they say they can do and that people can pull off new and hazily defined objectives where you just say the outcome you want, but you don't tell them the process to get there. Innovation isn't a thing you buy. It's a thing that people in your organization know how to do. This is how you teach people in your organization, the leaders, the developers, the operators who are going to become developers. This is how you teach them how to do innovation.
Yeah.
And just give them a business.
I
There you
know,
go.
but I'm like, and I'm sure that you're scaring some of our listeners by
I'm sure I am.
talking about it like this, because, with what you're talking about, but what if they don't do it? What if they don't do it? What if they're not capable? What if they don't know? Like, and so it's that, because the minute it's that there's a letting go part here, but there's also a part where, and me knowing you and knowing how you work and how we've been working together for a couple of years now, I think there's a part that you're not really explicitly talking about, which is you're actually teaching and growing those individuals as you put them through this.
Yes.
So
put them through it.
yes, you
Yeah.
put them through it
It
because
is.
they themselves are scared. They're like, what? Now I have to be responsible? What do you mean? I just work here. I'm not responsible. I just work here. So you have to elevate the individual and the group, and there's a certain human education that comes with it. This is where the love consciousness and the integral
Yes.
leadership comes into play, is really, yeah, by elevating people, we don't just give them a free rein.
Oh no.
You elevate them, and you basically you're coaching them in a way. You're also, I talk about it in my sessions with you and some other CEOs and leaders that I work with. I call it parental. It's a form of where for a moment you're exuding parental leadership, where you're allowing yourself to be the teacher, the parent, in a way that you're human to human, interested in what that person is going to do with themselves and what are they going to choose and how are you going to help them.
That's right. I call it being the Sherpa. Sherpas help people climb mountains, but it's not a theoretical help. Sherpas don't I mean, they can do, but an actual Sherpa service is one where they're climbing the mountain with you. They will show you what to do, but you actually have to walk. They will not literally carry you. They can carry some of your gear. They can provide you with the tools. They can help you avoid the traps. They can maybe even catch you if you fall. They fundamentally still need you to take a step on that mountain and then another and then another. There's no easy way to scale this type of work. You can grow this type of work. You can get better and better at sherping people up taller and taller mountains, more people at the same time, maybe. But there's a natural limit to how many that you can do at a time and still deliver a good service.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's a really good point too. And this makes me think of how the future of economics is shifting. And we're moving out of, so that we can only have so many big pyramidal corporations or organizations that are all centralized. And they can only um, deliver very single dimensional products that are
Right.
standardized, and they can do it very efficiently. But at some point, when we want to elevate people, we want to heal the planet, we want to regenerate the planet, or change the way we do things, the economic model is shifting, and it is shifting into, rather than these pyramidal shapes.
Megacorps. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. It's going into these, you said village earlier,
It's
and now we're talking about a Sherpa who has limitations. And
yes.
so it's going to be all of these like little villages or pods or small groups. But now with technology, we can exchange and share information and learning at the speed of light. So one Sherpa on one mountain can talk to another Sherpa on another mountain about what they're doing to be more efficient and effective. And they can also guide and teach a lot of the basics of what it means to be a Sherpa to lots of other potential Sherpas.
Yeah.
So what we're talking about is crowdsourcing uh, learning and development at a personal and professional level like never before, allowing a web kind of thing to happen on the planet rather than just these big monolithic, pyramidal, massive organizations. So both are going to come into play.
Yeah. Can you imagine? So like I love this. And yes, the the global network of information exchange that happens at the speed of light, that is the World Wide Web. Like that's what we have, right? But at the end of the day, if you want to climb Mount Everest, do you want the Sherpa brought to you by the village of Sherpas that lives at the base of Mount Everest, that is the mountain that they know? Or do you want the Sherpa service brought to you by Amazon, right? I don't know what that would be, right? Climb Mount Everest by Amazon. Gosh, I hope what I did not mention any brands. You can bleep that out later. But my point is we do need services provided by people who are experts, who are artisans, who know that craft very well.
Yeah.
We also do need services provided by megacorps. The internet is a huge piece of infrastructure that needs to be maintained by a corporation or a public entity or a global entity that is chartered to run that system.
Right.
And for leaders of those types of systems, they can't be after the power, right? They need to be really, really good stewards. We need to grow beyond the concept of ownership, right? We actually don't own anything. We can't take anything with us. All we can do is for the brief time that we're here, that we have the vitality and the strength in our bodies, all we can do is steward resources. That's literally all we can do. So I think as for the young people listening to this and for the leaders, what I've seen is that people go from learning how to be a good, reliable individual contributor to an expert, to being a great part of a team, to forming teams that can really perform at high levels. And that those teams can then go form businesses. And these people can then become owners, right? This is the track that a lot of us have followed in our careers, if we're lucky. But what comes after owner, right? I guess you just own bigger and bigger things. I guess then we just stop evolving and we start scaling.
I
But
think
there's actually another step.
I think there's more to it here. I think like if we think about it, like you're looking at, I see what you're saying, I think. But what I'm interested when I think about like the whole web thing that I was talking about, it's like we have all of these capabilities. So like we're making this podcast. Somebody's going to listen to it, and someone will hopefully get value out of it. So we have the power now to exchange information and education, to have more and more individuals operating at a higher level of being, consciousness, more stewards, less owners, with a broader, deeper understanding of what matters for the bigger picture, not for humanity as well as for themselves and their family.
Yeah, it doesn't matter where you are on that chain.
Exactly.
The presence of the World Wide Web is going to help you get to the next step faster. So it's not that we necessarily need fewer owners. It's that you are in danger of becoming an owner one day. So you better start thinking about it. Educate yourself.
Yeah, I think we really need to think about what that education, is. I mean, for me, I spent 35 years just trying to figure it out as a human, and then I wrote the book, and now I'm doing the podcast because, well, we need to talk about this whole love consciousness thing, because everybody that I've ever worked with that starts to understand this and integrate it into their lives is happier, more successful, healthier, more balanced. They move forward financially in their relationships, in their businesses. So it's all about that, not growth like scale growth, but growth as in depth,
Quality.
and quality of your life and where you're going and all of that. Yeah, that's great. Is there anything else you want to talk about before we close up today?
I think this has been really fun, and a lot of great points came up. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, you're very welcome. I look forward to having you back again.
I'll be more organized next time. I threw too many ideas out.
Well, we can pick some of those up, right?
I would like
Yeah, we can pick some of those up because love consciousness is everywhere all the time. It's just a question of tapping into it and alleviating ourselves from the war consciousness, that constant cognitive dissidence that we live inside us first. That's where it starts. I did want to just think, just one like closing thought I had that you kind of touched on when we were talking about what it means to create value. And in a world like today, right now, I look around and I see in so many ways how people are not nice to each other, not treating each other well, whether it's in our families or in our communities or across the world. And I want to like just end with like an open question about, because I know this works in business and in society, is like when we slow down and start helping one another and start like dare to care and think about what it means to help, even at the smallest level, help someone else and even help ourselves. Like do the right thing for our body, do the right thing for our neighbor or a loved one. And that kind of place inside us, which is a little, I don't know, it feels kind of raw and tender to go there.
Yeah.
But I want to just lay that out like as a thoughtful challenge moving forward. All right. Thank you, Lu, for coming on. And where can we find you, by the way?
You can find me doing work with my team in Boston. You can find me traveling all over the country to teach about artificial intelligence and business essentials this year.
How can they email you or connect with you?
Oh, sure. You can find me on LinkedIn. Look for Lu Wang Komodo, and you'll find me. And Komodotech.io if you want to check us out on the World Wide Web.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being our guest today.
Thank you, Dr. Terry.
Thanks for listening to this episode from start to finish. It is always a pleasure to reach a fellow love-conscious human. If you want to expand on your consciousness education, check out the book, Flip Your Switch on Amazon. and the courses on loveconscioushuman.com. Or you can book a private coaching session with me. We hope you'll join us again. Be sure to subscribe and leave a review. Let's come together to crowdsource a love-conscious world.